So actually, I thought Professor Rabkin usefully called our attention to history, but I would draw somewhat different lessons from the history. Everything up to the time of the Cold War that was done by presidents in time of crisis was known. And in case of Lincoln, what he did, he asked the Congress, he said to the Congress, you know, you may disapprove of what I've done. If you do, please criticize me, but I'd like you to ratify what I've done. And they did ratify what he did. Then came along the Cold War, and we began to have excessive secrecy. And the great lesson that the Church Committee learned, and that we're learning again today, is if you have secrecy and you have a lack of oversight, you are bound to have two things. One, abuse, but even more importantly, you're likely to have mistakes. Because the great lesson of James Madison in the 51st Federalist, where he said men, we'd now say men and women, are not angels. The great lesson was, because we are not angels, the government, in his words, must be obliged to control itself. That's what checks and balances mean. That's what oversight means. Now, the other thing that's unique about the current administration is that for the first time in American history, the administration takes the position, first voiced by the Vice President when he was a congressman 20 years ago and he dissented from the Iran-Contra report. The administration takes the position that, like the British monarchs in the 17th century, the President has the right to break the law. If he believes that the law gets in the way of what he thinks are national security objectives, he can break the law, and he can do so secretly. Now, that is an enormously dangerous loaded gun to pick up on that possession that lies, unless it is squashed, that lies for future presidents to take advantage of, future presidents of either party. This is totally unique. Richard Nixon, only when he left office did he tell first the Church Committee in a rather obscure affidavit, and then David Frost in that famous television interview, that, in his words, when the President does it, that means it's not illegal. But we're now in a position where the OLC's position still is that the President can break the law if he thinks there's a need to do it, and can do so secretly. And that's something that every American from either party should say is a dangerous doctrine that needs to be squashed, disagreed with, exposed, and never accepted by anybody in this government or by the American people.
President of Veterans for Peace, Elliott Adams.
I will follow the model of Rabkin here. But I would like to, since everybody else has promoted their book, I'd like to promote my book, but I haven't written it yet.
I can hardly wait.
Thanks.
I thank all of the witnesses. You've been extraordinarily cooperative. We will accept into the record any additional comments, documents, or enlightening paperwork that you'd like to have go into the record. Thank you all very, very much. And the chair now turns to the ranking member who's patiently been waiting for his turn. We recognize him for any questions to any of the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The witnesses have not only been unusually cooperative, they've been unusually voluble. And I have to say, Mr. Chairman, I do believe you set the record today with eliciting 22 minutes worth of answers under the 5-minute rule, and I hope I don't break that record myself. Mr. Chairman, I am not altogether sure that the witnesses got your message about this not being an impeachment hearing. By my count, they've used the word impeachment at least 30 times, and I think euphemisms amount to at least 3 times that many. Nevertheless, a lot of important subjects have been brought up. The first thing I want to do is to thank Professor Presser and Professor Rabkin. If you could move to a mic, I'm going to direct some questions towards you all in just a minute. I want to thank you all for making a big effort to be here today, which I know is at some personal inconvenience, but it's much appreciated as well. Mr. Professor, very quickly, Mr. Bugliosi seemed to have attacked you personally a while ago, and I didn't know if you wanted to respond or not.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity. I suppose it's not the right thing to do to relitigate the Clinton impeachment hearings, but Mr. Bugliosi said, I think twice, that they were all about lying about sex. They weren't. More than half of this House believed that they were about obstruction of justice and tampering with witnesses and doing other acts that seemed to suggest no regard to the President's obligation to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That's what I thought the Clinton impeachment was all about, not lying about sex. But that's over now, and we can move on. Okay.
Professor Pressler, let me ask a couple of other questions. First of all, have you heard any credible allegation today that you think amounts to any kind of an impeachable offense?
No.
A few minutes ago, you said that you thought the real problem was, or suggested that the real problem was just a difference of opinion, a difference of policy, and you thought that the same legitimate actions taken by this president had been taken by any other president. So I assume that you don't think there's any evidence of misconduct in this administration.
That's my view. I think the comments about what other presidents have done was probably from Professor Rabkin, but I think the answer to your question is still, I haven't seen acts that would rise to the level of any impeachable offense.
And Professor Rabkin, now that you're at a mic, you have regretted strongly the tone of the debate that surrounds this particular subject. If you look beneath the anger and the hatred and the bitterness, do you see any impeachable offenses? And sort of a secondary question, what accounts for that? That is the tone.
Let me start with the first question. Is there something impeachable? If people believed that the president knowingly, deliberately got us into a war for reasons completely unrelated to national security, and he did it, I don't know, to enrich oil companies, I really have not been able to understand what people were alluding to. They seem to be suggesting that the actual reasons for going into Iraq were so completely removed from national security that he wasn't just engaged in constructing an argument where someone might disagree with, but he was totally misrepresenting what were the real reasons. If that were true, of course that would be impeachable. You absolutely need to defend the country against a chief executive who would wantonly take the country into war for illicit purposes, sure. But I mean, nobody has tried really to explain what that conspiracy theory is. It is just alluded to. Now, to the second thing, which is why are people so bitter, which I think has something to do with why they find it even plausible that such a charge is worth investigating, which just to me seems so demented, really. I mean, you have to believe not only that the president is a Shakespearean villain, right? I mean, is Iago, I mean, just pure evil. You have to believe not only that, but you have to believe that all through the White House there are people saying, you know, I think I'll just cover it up. You know, I think I just won't let anyone know this, and that seems to me unbelievable. So I think if people are open to this, they must be extremely bitter. I mean, the people making these charges, and why is that? I just give you one thing that's worth reminding ourselves of, which is the country has been closely divided for a long time, and that tends to build up, you know, a sense of frustration and sometimes rage. And here we now seem to be the third election in a row, which is going to be really, really close. I'm not criticizing anyone for that. I'm just reminding people, in a situation like that, tempers flare. People get a little bit overwrought, and I think some of what we've heard here today was just overwrought.